Ms. Rivera, would you like to say a few words about your daughter's achievement before I present the award? The question hung in the air between me and the man I hadn't seen in 12 years. The man who had walked out when I was 7 months pregnant. The man who had blocked my number, moved cities, and built an empire while his daughter grew up sharing a bedroom with her grandmother. Nathan Cross stood on the stage of the Silicon Valley Youth Innovation Summit, $50,000 in scholarship money in his hands, about to give it to the brilliant 15-year-old girl he had never met. His daughter. Our daughter. And he had absolutely no idea who I was. You know what they say about karma? Some people think it's about revenge, about getting even, about watching the people who hurt you suffer. But I've learned that real karma is more complicated than that. It's about standing in a moment you never could have imagined and realizing that every terrible thing that happened to you was building towards something you couldn't have planned if you tried. My name is Camila Rivera, and this is the story of how I went from a terrified 22-year-old abandoned by her baby's father to the woman standing in the wings of a tech conference, watching that same man about to discover that the genius teenager who just revolutionized accessible healthcare technology is the child he threw away. But before I tell you what I did next, before I tell you what I said when he asked me that question, I need you to understand how we got here. I need you to understand what it took to survive. And I really need you to understand what happened when he finally realized the truth. Hey, everyone watching this. How are you doing today? Wherever you are right now, whether you're watching this at home, on your commute, or maybe hiding from responsibilities you don't want to deal with, I'm glad you're here. The weather's been unpredictable lately, hasn't it? Seems fitting for a story about how life can change in an instant. If this story grabs you, if it makes you feel something, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about survival, about fighting back, about refusing to stay broken. And definitely comment below because I want to know what you would have done in my position. Would you have stayed silent or burned it all down? But let me start from the beginning. I was 22 when I met Nathan Cross, though he wasn't Nathan Cross yet. He was Nate, just Nate, a 25-year-old software engineer working at a mid-level tech company in Austin, Texas. I was finishing my degree in biomedical engineering at UT Austin, working 2 part-time jobs, and honestly just trying to keep my head above water. My parents had immigrated from Colombia when I was 3. My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. They gave me everything they had, which wasn't much in terms of money, but was everything in terms of love and sacrifice. They believed in education the way some people believe in religion. My degree was going to change everything for our family. That was the plan, anyway. I met Nate at a tech mixer that my professor had basically forced me to attend. Networking, Camila, he'd said. That's how you get ahead in this field. I'd shown up in my best thrift store blazer, clutching a resume I'd printed at the library, feeling like an imposter among all these people who seemed to speak a language I was still learning. Nate found me hiding near the snack table, probably looking as uncomfortable as I felt. These events are terrible, aren't they? He'd said, and his smile was so genuine that I actually laughed. We talked for 3 hours. He didn't talk down to me, didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing every tech buzzword. He was interested in my ideas about affordable medical devices, about using technology to help people who couldn't afford traditional healthcare. He said I was brilliant. He said I was going to change the world. I believed him because I was young and hopeful and so tired of struggling alone. We started dating 2 weeks later. For 6 months, it was everything I'd never let myself hope for. He was kind, attentive, and supportive. He came to my presentations. He helped me debug code at 2 in the morning. He met my parents and spoke terrible Spanish that made my mother laugh. He said he loved me. He said we were building something together. He said a lot of things that turned out to be worthless. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks before graduation. We'd been careful, but not careful enough, and suddenly I was staring at 2 pink lines on a test I'd taken in a campus bathroom, my entire future rearranging itself in real time. I was terrified, obviously. But I was also hopeful in that naive way you can only be when you haven't yet learned how quickly someone can betray you. Nate and I had talked about the future. We talked about moving in together after I graduated. We talked about building careers together, about the startup idea he was developing, about how my medical device expertise and his software skills could create something amazing. I thought a baby would just be adding to those dreams, not destroying them. I told him on a Thursday evening in April. I'd made his favorite dinner, which was ridiculous looking back, because why was I trying to soften the blow of my own pregnancy, like it was bad news? But I was young and scared, and I wanted everything to be okay. "I'm pregnant," I'd said, after we'd eaten, after I'd worked up the courage. "About 7 weeks. I know this isn't what we planned, but we can make this work. I've already been looking into childcare options near campus for graduate school, and my mom said she'd help." And graduate school? He'd interrupted, and his voice had this tone I'd never heard before. Cold. Distant. "Camila, you can't be serious. You can't go to graduate school with a baby." "People do it all the time," I'd argued. "It won't be easy, but I can't do this." He'd stood up from the table. Just stood up like we were discussing what movie to watch, not the entire trajectory of our lives. "I'm not ready to be a father. I have plans. I'm about to get funding for my startup. This isn't the right time." "When is the right time?" I'd asked, and I could hear my voice starting to shake. "Nate, we're having a baby. There's no right time. There's just making it work." "You're having a baby," he'd corrected. "I'm not part of this." Those words. I can still hear them exactly as he said them. Flat. Final. Like he was declining a job offer, not abandoning his child. What followed was the worst 3 weeks of my life up to that point. He avoided my calls. He moved out of his apartment without telling me where he was going. When I finally tracked him down at his office, he had his assistant tell me he was in a meeting. When I waited for him in the parking lot, he had security escort me away. The last communication I ever received from Nathan Cross before that tech fair was a text message. "I've made my position clear. Any further contact will be considered harassment. I've consulted with a lawyer. You have no claim on me or my future earnings. The pregnancy was your choice. Live with it." I was 7 months pregnant when that message came through. I'd already dropped out of the graduate program I'd been accepted to. I'd already moved back in with my parents because I couldn't afford rent and medical bills. I'd already started working at a medical supply company doing data entry because it was the only job I could find that would hire a visibly pregnant woman with no experience. I cried for 3 days straight when I got that text. And then I made a decision. I decided that Nathan Cross was dead to me. Not out of anger, though there was plenty of that. Out of necessity. I couldn't spend my energy hating him or chasing him or trying to force him to care. I had a daughter coming, and she deserved a mother who was present, who was strong, who was fighting for her future instead of drowning in the past. So I deleted his number. I blocked every way he could contact me. Not that he was trying. And I named my daughter Valentina Rivera. Just Rivera. Not Cross. He didn't get to claim her even in name. Valentina was born on a Tuesday in August, 8 pounds and 3 ounces of perfect. My mother was in the delivery room with me, holding my hand and crying happy tears. My father paced the waiting room and then held his granddaughter like she was made of glass. My younger brother made a playlist of Colombian lullabies and helped me set up the crib we'd bought secondhand. My family showed up. Nathan didn't. And that told me everything I needed to know about who deserved to be in Valentina's life. The first few years were brutal. I'm not going to pretend they weren't. I worked full-time at the medical supply company and took online classes whenever Valentina slept. My mother watched her during the day while I worked. I watched her at night while I studied. Sleep became this theoretical concept I vaguely remembered from before motherhood. But here's what I learned during those exhausting, overwhelming, terrifying years. I was so much stronger than I ever knew. And my daughter was absolutely extraordinary. Valentina started reading at 3. By 4, she was asking questions about how things worked that I had to look up online to answer. By 6, she was taking apart old electronics I brought home from work and putting them back together in new configurations. By 8, she was teaching herself basic programming through YouTube videos. "Mommy," she'd say, her dark eyes intense with focus, "why can't the people in Abuela's neighborhood afford the same medical monitors that rich people have?"
Can't we just make them cheaper?
That question changed everything. I'd been working in medical supply for 8 years at that point, and I'd moved up to procurement and logistics. It wasn't the biomedical engineering career I'd dreamed about, but it was stable, and it paid enough that we'd been able to move into our own apartment. Just me and Valentina. Small victories. But Valentina's question reminded me of the dreams I'd had before Nathan, before pregnancy, before survival became my only goal. The dreams about accessible healthcare, about using technology to help people who got left behind by the system. "You're right," I'd told her. "We can make them cheaper. Want to try?" That conversation happened when Valentina was 9. By the time she was 12, we had a working prototype of a health monitoring device that cost $30 in parts instead of $300. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't sleek. But it worked, and it could help people in underserved communities track blood pressure, heart rate, and blood sugar without going bankrupt. Valentina did most of the programming. I helped with the medical device regulations and the hardware sourcing. We worked on it together at our tiny kitchen table, mother and daughter, building something that mattered. We submitted it to a few local science fairs, won some ribbons, got some encouragement from teachers. But it wasn't until Valentina's 8th grade teacher nominated her project for the Silicon Valley Youth Innovation Summit that things got real. "Ms. Rivera," the teacher had called me at work, "Valentina's been selected as one of 20 finalists. The summit is in 3 months. The winner gets a $50,000 scholarship and mentorship from industry leaders. This could change her life." I'd had to sit down.
$50,000.
That was college tuition. That was Valentina not having to make the choices I'd made. That was every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, potentially leading to something beautiful. "We'll be there," I'd said. The summit was in San Francisco, and we couldn't afford the hotel they suggested, so we stayed with my cousin in Oakland and took the BART into the city. Valentina wore a dress my mother had made for her, navy blue with small white flowers, and carried her project boards like they were made of gold. The convention center was massive and overwhelming. Hundreds of teenagers with their projects, parents with expensive cameras, tech industry professionals in clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. I felt that old imposter syndrome creeping back, the same feeling I'd had at that tech mixer 13 years ago. But Valentina was fearless. She set up her booth, explained her project to anyone who would listen, and answered technical questions with the confidence of someone twice her age. I stayed close but tried not to hover, proud beyond words. The finalist presentations were scheduled for the second day. 5 finalists would present to a panel of judges and a live audience, and then the winner would be announced that evening at a ceremony with industry sponsors and corporate partners. I didn't know who the judges were. I didn't know who was sponsoring the event. I'd been so focused on getting Valentina there, on making sure she had this opportunity, that I hadn't bothered to check the details. That was my first mistake. The morning of the presentations, Valentina was practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Mommy, what if I mess up? What if they ask a question I can't answer? What if the demo doesn't work?" I'd crouched down to her level, even though at 15 she was almost as tall as me now. "Valentina, you've been working on this project for 3 years. You know it inside and out. And even if something goes wrong, even if you don't win, I'm already proud of you. You've already changed lives with this device. Winning would be great, but you've already won in the ways that matter." She'd hugged me tight. "I love you, Mommy. Thanks for always believing in me. Always, Mija. Always." The presentations went smoothly. Valentina was third and she was brilliant. Clear, confident, passionate about helping people. The audience asked tough questions, and she answered every single one. The demo worked perfectly. When she finished, people actually applauded, which apparently wasn't common at these events. I'd been standing in the wings of the auditorium, watching, crying proud mom tears, when someone handed me a program for the evening ceremony. That's when I saw his name. Nathan Cross, CEO of Cross Tech Solutions, presenting the Grand Prize Award and Scholarship. The program included a photo. Older, more polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, but unmistakably him. The same eyes. The same smile that had once made me believe in forever. My hands started shaking.
Cross Tech Solutions.
I'd heard of them. Everyone in the medical device world had heard of them. They'd revolutionized patient data management systems, made billions, and turned Nathan into one of those young tech CEOs that magazines wrote glowing profiles about. I'd avoided reading those profiles. Avoided anything with his name on it. But I couldn't avoid this. He was going to present the award to my daughter. To our daughter. And he had no idea. I had about 6 hours to decide what to do before the ceremony started. Part of me wanted to grab Valentina and leave. Just walk out, protect her from the truth, from the potential hurt. She knew her father had left before she was born. She knew he wanted nothing to do with us. But knowing abstractly and meeting him face to face were very different things. Another part of me wanted revenge. Wanted to expose him publicly, to tell everyone in that ballroom that the great Nathan Cross had abandoned his daughter, had threatened legal action to avoid responsibility, had built his empire while she shared a bedroom with her grandmother. But the biggest part of me, the part that wanted to see his face when he realized. Wanted him to know what he'd thrown away. Wanted him to understand that Valentina's brilliance, her compassion, her drive to help people, all of that had happened without him, despite him. So I stayed. The ceremony that evening was held in a massive ballroom with round tables covered in white linens and centerpieces that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Valentina and I were seated at a table up front with the other finalists and their families. I changed into the one nice dress I owned, black and simple, and Valentina was still in her navy blue. "This is so fancy, Mommy," she'd whispered, looking around with wide eyes. "You belong here," I'd whispered back. "Don't ever forget that." The ceremony began with speeches from organizers and sponsors. I barely heard any of it. I was watching the door, waiting for him to appear, my heart racing faster than it had in years. And then there he was. Nathan Cross walked into that ballroom like he owned it, which, given that Crosstech was the primary sponsor, he kind of did. Older, yes. More polished, definitely.
But still fundamentally him.
Still the man who had looked me in the eye and said our daughter was my choice to live with. He worked the room before the presentation started, shaking hands, smiling for photos. He passed within 10 feet of our table, and I held my breath, waiting for recognition. Nothing. He didn't even glance our way. Why would he? I was just another parent in a room full of parents. He didn't know he had a daughter, let alone that she was sitting 20 feet away from him. The award presentation started with 5th place and worked up. Each time they called a finalist, my heart rate increased. Valentina squeezed my hand. 4th place, in the category of environmental innovation, goes to Jeremy Martinez from Seattle, Washington. 3rd place, in the category of educational technology, goes to Simone Johnson from Atlanta, Georgia. 2nd place, in the category of social impact innovation, goes to David Kim from Chicago, Illinois. Valentina looked at me with wide eyes. If she didn't win 2nd place, then she either won 1st place or didn't place at all. And now, for our grand prize winner, the announcer said, the project that our judges felt best embodied innovation, accessibility, and social impact.
Time slowed down.
I could see Valentina holding her breath. Valentina Rivera from Austin, Texas, for her accessible health monitoring system. The ballroom erupted in applause. Valentina stood up so fast she nearly knocked her chair over. tears streaming down her face. I stood with her, hugging her tight, crying myself. "You did it, baby. You did it." She practically floated to the stage, accepting her certificate and flowers from the announcer. And then Nathan Cross stepped forward with the scholarship check and the award trophy. I watched him smile at my daughter, our daughter, with absolutely no recognition. No sense that he was looking at his own eyes, his own smile, his own intelligence reflected back at him. "Congratulations, Valentina," he said, his voice amplified through the microphone, the same voice that had once told me he loved me, that had later told me I was harassing him. "Your project is exactly the kind of innovation we need in this world. Tell me, who inspired you to create something that helps people?" Valentina took the microphone, and I saw her glance back at me in the audience. "My mom," she said clearly, proudly. "She's a single mother who works in medical supply, and she always taught me that technology should help everyone, not just people who can afford it. Everything I am, everything I've built, is because she never gave up on me." The audience applauded again, and I was sobbing now, not even trying to hide it. Nathan smiled, still clueless, and gestured for a photo. Valentina stood next to him, holding the check, and cameras flashed. Father and daughter, together for the first time, and he had no idea. After the photo, Nathan turned to address the audience again. "This scholarship comes with a mentorship component," he said. "I'll be working personally with Valentina over the next year to help develop her device for market. I'm excited to support the next generation of innovators." My stomach dropped. A year of mentorship. A year of Nathan being in Valentina's life, still not knowing who she was. That's when Nathan turned to me in the audience. "We like to recognize the families behind our winners too," he said. "Ms. Rivera, would you like to say a few words about your daughter's achievement before I present the award?" And that's where I came in. That's where this story started, with Nathan Cross asking me to speak, with our daughter standing on stage between us, with 15 years of secrets and survival and sacrifice hanging in the balance. I stood up slowly, walked toward the stage. Every eye in that ballroom was on me, but the only eyes that mattered were Valentina's, watching me with trust and love. I took the microphone from Nathan's hand, and our fingers brushed for just a second. Still no recognition. Still no memory of the woman he'd threatened with legal action for daring to contact him about their child. I looked out at the audience, then at Valentina, then at Nathan. And I made a choice that would change everything. What did Camila say? How did Nathan react when he discovered the truth? And what happened when a billionaire realized he'd abandoned the daughter who just proved she was brilliant enough to change the world? Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Camila's position. Would you have exposed him immediately? Or would you have played the long game? And don't forget to like and subscribe for the rest of this story. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. I didn't expose him. Not yet. Instead, I smiled at the audience and said, "Valentina is the best thing that ever happened to me. Being her mother has been the greatest privilege of my life. Every sacrifice was worth it to see her standing here today." The audience applauded. Nathan smiled politely, still oblivious. Valentina beamed at me from the stage. I handed the microphone back to Nathan and returned to my seat, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I'd just passed up my chance for immediate revenge, for public humiliation, for justice. But something in Valentina's eyes had stopped me. She was happy, purely and completely happy, experiencing the biggest triumph of her young life. I couldn't taint that moment with the ugliness of her origin story. Not yet. She deserved this night to be about her achievement, not about the father who abandoned her. The revenge, I decided, could wait. After the ceremony ended, Nathan approached our table directly. Up close, I could see the expensive watch, the tailored suit, the confidence that came from never having to worry about money. The confidence I'd lost when he walked away. "Ms. Rivera," he said, extending his hand to me. "Nathan Cross. I'm looking forward to working with your daughter. Her project has real commercial potential. I shook his hand, holding his gaze.
Still nothing.
13 years, and I'd become so forgettable that the man who'd once said he loved me couldn't recognize me at all. Maybe I'd changed more than I thought. The scared 22-year-old he'd known had been replaced by someone harder, someone who'd survived things he couldn't imagine. Thank you for this opportunity, I said evenly. Valentina's worked very hard. I can tell. He turned to Valentina. How would you feel about visiting Crosstech headquarters next month? I'd like to introduce you to our product development team, see if we can refine your prototype for manufacturing. Valentina's eyes went wide. Really? That would be incredible. Excellent. My assistant will coordinate with your mother. He pulled out a business card and handed it to me. All my contact information is there. We'll be in touch soon. I took the card, his name embossed in silver letters. Nathan Cross, CEO. The same man who'd blocked my number and called me a harasser.
We look forward to it, I said.
He moved on to congratulate the other finalists, and Valentina grabbed my arm. Mommy, can you believe this? Crosstech. He's like one of the biggest names in medical technology. I know, Mija. This is going to change everything. The scholarship, the mentorship, everything. She paused, suddenly worried. You'll come with me to the meetings, right? I don't want to do this without you. I hug her close. Of course I'll come. We're a team, remember? We always have been. What I didn't tell her was that I'd be coming to those meetings for another reason entirely. I'd be watching Nathan Cross, learning everything about the life he'd built while we struggled. And when the time was right, when I had all the information I needed, I'd make sure he understood exactly what he'd thrown away. But first, I needed to understand who he'd become. That night, after Valentina finally fell asleep in our hotel room, buzzing with excitement even in her dreams, I did what I'd avoided for 13 years. I Googled Nathan Cross. The results were overwhelming. Articles about his company's meteoric rise. Profiles in business magazines. TED Talks about innovation and accessibility in healthcare technology. Awards for technological advancement and social impact. Social impact. The irony was suffocating. There were personal details, too, things that made my hands clench around my phone. Nathan had gotten married 4 years ago to someone named Victoria Ashford, a venture capitalist he'd met through business circles. No children yet, according to the articles, though they lived in a mansion in Palo Alto that had been featured in Architectural Digest. No children. He'd built this empire, married this woman, created this perfect life, all while telling himself he'd made the right choice abandoning his daughter. I scrolled through photos of Nathan and Victoria at charity galas, tech conferences, and exclusive events. She was beautiful in that polished, expensive way, blonde hair always perfectly styled, designer clothes, the kind of smile that came from never having worried about making rent. In every photo, Nathan looked happy, successful, unburdened. He'd never looked back, never wondered about the child he'd abandoned, never lost a single night of sleep over the choice he'd made. That realization hurt more than I expected. I'd told myself for years that I didn't care, that he was dead to me, that his absence didn't matter. But seeing the proof of how easily he'd moved on, how completely he'd erased us from his life, it reopened wounds I thought had scarred over. I found an interview from 2 years ago where the reporter asked about his inspiration for focusing on accessible healthcare technology. I believe everyone deserves access to quality medical care, regardless of their economic status, Nathan had said, looking earnest and sincere. Technology should be a bridge, not a barrier. That's always been my philosophy. I actually laughed out loud at that, a bitter sound that made Valentina stir in her sleep. His philosophy. The man who'd abandoned his pregnant girlfriend because a baby didn't fit his timeline was now claiming he cared about helping people. The man who'd threatened me with lawyers for asking for basic support was now giving speeches about accessibility and equity. He'd stolen my dream. That's what hit me hardest as I read article after article. The accessible healthcare devices, the focus on underserved communities, the passion for making technology available to everyone, those had been my ideas. My dreams. The things I talked about during those late-night conversations when we were together, when I believed we were partners building something meaningful. He'd taken those ideas, built a billion-dollar company on them, and completely erased the woman who'd inspired them. I took screenshots of everything. Saved articles. Made notes. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use this information, but I was learning from Nathan's own playbook. Always have documentation. Always have proof. By the time I finally put my phone down, it was 3 in the morning. Valentina had to be up in 4 hours for our flight back to Austin. I should have been sleeping, but my mind was racing with possibilities. The old Camila would have been scared, would have backed away, grateful for the scholarship, willing to let sleeping dogs lie. But I wasn't that person anymore. 13 years of fighting for every small victory had taught me that people like Nathan didn't face consequences unless someone forced them to. And I was tired of people like him getting away with everything. The next morning, exhausted but determined, I helped Valentina pack up her project materials while she chattered excitedly about the mentorship program. Mr. Cross said they'd help me get a patent, Mommy. A patent? Do you know how huge that is? And he wants to introduce me to investors who fund youth entrepreneurs. This could actually become a real business. That's wonderful, Mija. I folded her navy dress carefully, the one my mother had made. Just remember, business relationships are complicated. Always protect yourself, always get everything in writing, and never trust someone just because they seem successful. Valentina paused in her packing. That's kind of cynical, don't you think? It's realistic. I've seen too many people get taken advantage of by people who seemed trustworthy. I met her eyes. I just want you to be careful. To be smart. Success can change people. Make them forget where they came from. Is this about my dad? The question caught me off guard. Valentina rarely asked about her father. We'd had the conversation when she was old enough to understand. He'd left before she was born. He wasn't part of our lives. We were better off without him. She'd accepted it with the pragmatism of a child who'd never known anything different. Why would you ask that? She shrugged, suddenly looking younger than 15. Because you only get this protective when you're worried about someone hurting me the way he hurt you. And I get it, Mommy. I do. But not everyone is like him. Mr. Cross seems genuinely interested in helping young inventors. His whole company is built on making healthcare accessible. I had to turn away so she wouldn't see my expression. You're right. I'm probably being overprotective. This is just all happening so fast. I know it's scary, but it's good scary, right? This is what we've been working toward. You're absolutely right. I turned back with a smile that felt like it might crack my face. I'm proud of you, Valentina. So incredibly proud. What I didn't say was that I was about to make sure Nathan Cross learned exactly who his daughter was. And when I did, his carefully constructed world was going to shatter just like mine had 13 years ago. But first, I needed a plan. The flight back to Austin gave me time to think. Valentina fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the excitement, her head resting against the window. I sat beside her with my laptop open, pretending to work on procurement reports while actually researching everything I could find about Crosstech Solutions. The company had started small, just Nathan and 2 partners working out of a shared office space in San Francisco. According to the origin story he told in interviews, he'd gotten the idea for accessible patient data management after watching his grandmother struggle to coordinate care between multiple doctors. His grandmother. The one who'd been perfectly healthy when I knew him. The one he'd barely mentioned during our entire relationship. Another lie. Another piece of fiction in the mythology he'd built around himself. The real breakthrough for Crosstech had come 6 years ago with a system that allowed low-income clinics to manage patient records at a fraction of the cost of traditional systems. It revolutionized community healthcare and made Nathan a fortune in the process. Government contracts followed, then hospital systems, then international expansion. He'd become exactly what I'd dreamed of becoming. He'd built exactly what I'd wanted to build. And he'd done it by abandoning the woman who'd given him those ideas and the daughter who could have been part of it all. When we landed in Austin, my mother was waiting at arrivals with flowers and a homemade banner that said, "Congratulations, Valentina," in glittery letters. My father stood beside her, beaming with pride. My brother had brought his new girlfriend to meet the genius of the family. Valentina ran to them, and I watched my family surround her with love and celebration. This was what Nathan had missed. This was what he'd chosen to walk away from. My mother pulled me aside while the others fussed over Valentina. "You look tired, Mija. Did you sleep at all?" "Not much. It was a lot to process." She studied my face with that mother's intuition that sees everything. Something happened. Something more than just Valentina winning. I'd never told my parents Nathan's full name. They knew him as Nate, the boyfriend who'd disappeared, but I'd never given them enough information to track him down. It had been easier that way, cleaner. My father had wanted to find him, to make him take responsibility, but I'd begged them to let it go. Now I wondered if that had been a mistake. "The man presenting the award," I said quietly. "The CEO offering Valentina the mentorship. It was him. It was Nathan." My mother's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "That's Valentina's father? And he didn't recognize you? Not even for a second?"
Dios mío.
She grabbed my hand. "What did you do? What did you say?" "Nothing. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell Valentina either." "Why not? That man deserves to know what he abandoned. Valentina deserves to know who he is." "I know. And she will know. They both will. But not like that. Not in front of hundreds of people at her moment of triumph. When the truth comes out, it needs to be strategic. It needs to count." My mother looked at me for a long moment. "You've changed, Camila. You're not the scared girl he left behind."
No.
"I'm not."
Good.
"That man took enough from you. Don't let him take your peace too. Whatever you decide to do, we're behind you. Always." That conversation stayed with me over the next 2 weeks as we waited for CrossTech to contact us about the mentorship program. Valentina checked her email constantly, worried they'd forgotten, anxious that the opportunity would disappear. "They're a huge company, Mija," I kept telling her. "These things take time." But privately, I wondered if Nathan had somehow figured it out. If he'd looked at our last name, done the math, and decided to quietly back away from the commitment he'd made publicly. I should have known better. Nathan Cross didn't back away from opportunities. He just reshaped them to his advantage. The email finally came on a Tuesday afternoon. Not from an assistant, but from Nathan himself. "Dear Valentina and Ms. Rivera," it began, professional and warm. "I apologize for the delay in reaching out. We've been working behind the scenes to create a mentorship program worthy of Valentina's exceptional talent. I'd like to invite you both to CrossTech headquarters in Palo Alto next Friday for a full day of meetings with our product development team, our patent attorneys, and our investor relations department. We'll cover all travel expenses, of course. I'm also hoping you'll join me for dinner that evening so we can discuss the long-term vision for Valentina's device. Please let me know if this timeline works for your schedule. Best regards, Nathan Cross." Valentina was ecstatic. I was calculating. A full day at his headquarters. Dinner with just the three of us. He was offering me time, access, opportunity. He was giving me everything I needed to destroy him. I confirmed our attendance within an hour. Professional, brief, grateful. Everything Nathan would expect from a single mother grateful for the opportunity he was offering her daughter. The week leading up to the trip was strange. I moved through my normal routine, work helping Valentina with homework, grocery shopping, paying bills, but everything felt different now. Every action felt like preparation for something bigger. I requested Friday off from work, citing a family commitment. My boss, who'd seen me come in sick more times than I could count because I couldn't afford to miss a day, was surprised but approved it immediately. "Your daughter won that big tech competition, right?" he said. "Take the time. You've earned it." If he only knew what I was really planning. Valentina was a bundle of nervous energy. She revised her presentation materials a dozen times, practiced her pitch until she could recite it in her sleep, and researched Crosstech's entire product portfolio. "I want to show Mr. Cross that I'm serious," she explained, surrounded by printed articles and handwritten notes. "That I understand the business side, not just the engineering." "You don't need to prove anything, Mija. They already chose you." "I know, but this is my one shot. I can't mess it up." I understood that feeling more than she knew. This was my one shot too, just not in the way she imagined. Thursday night, I packed carefully. Professional clothes for the meetings, my best blazer, the black dress pants I saved for important occasions, the blouse my mother had bought me last Christmas. Then, for dinner, the black dress from the award ceremony. I also packed something else. A folder containing every text message Nathan had sent me 13 years ago. Printed emails. A copy of the last message where he'd threatened legal action. I'd kept them all these years in a box under my bed, not sure why I was saving them. Maybe some part of me had always known this moment would come. The flight to San Francisco Friday morning was turbulent. Valentina gripped the armrest during the rough patches, but I barely noticed. I was too focused on what was coming. A driver met us at the airport holding a sign with our names. Actual driver, in a black car that probably cost more than 3 years of my salary. Valentina took a photo to send to my mother.
This is insane, Mommy.
They sent a driver. It's how companies like this operate, I said, sliding into the leather seat. They want to impress you. What I didn't say was that it was also a power move. Nathan was establishing the dynamic from the start. He had resources we couldn't imagine. He was doing us a favor. We should be grateful. I'd seen this play before. I wouldn't fall for it again. Crosstech headquarters was exactly what I'd expected. Glass and steel, open floor plans, employees working at standing desks with multiple monitors. Everywhere I looked, I saw the future I'd imagined for myself, the career I'd sacrificed, the dreams I deferred. Nathan hadn't deferred anything. He'd just removed the obstacle, me, and kept climbing. The receptionist greeted us warmly and handed us visitor badges. "Mr. Cross is finishing up a meeting, but he'll be down shortly. In the meantime, Jenna from our product development team will give you a tour." Jenna was enthusiastic and young, maybe 25. She graduated from MIT 2 years ago and acted like working at Crosstech was the greatest achievement of her life. "Nathan is an incredible mentor," she gushed as she walked us through the building. "He takes personal interest in every team member's development. I've learned more in 2 years here than I did in 4 years of college." Valentina was soaking it all in, asking questions, taking mental notes. I was watching the employees, seeing the cult of personality Nathan had built. Everyone spoke about him with reverence, like he was some kind of visionary saint instead of a man who'd abandoned his pregnant girlfriend. We were in the innovation lab, Valentina examining a prototype device, when I heard his voice behind us. "Valentina, Ms. Rivera, welcome to Crosstech." I turned, and there he was. Business casual today, expensive jeans, a button-down shirt, the kind of outfit that looked effortless, but probably cost $1,000. Smiling that same smile that had once made me feel like the only person in the room. He shook Valentina's hand first, then mine. His grip was firm, confident. Still no recognition in his eyes. "Thank you for having us," I said. "This facility is impressive. Wait until you see what we have planned for today. Valentina, I've assembled our best people to work with you. By the end of the day, we'll have a clear roadmap for bringing your device to market." He paused, then looked at me. "Ms. Rivera, I hope you don't mind, but I've also arranged for you to meet with our community outreach director. I understand you work in medical supply, and I thought you might be interested in learning about our programs for underserved communities." It was a considerate gesture. Thoughtful, even. The kind of thing that would make any mother grateful that her daughter's mentor was so attentive. But I saw it for what it really was. Nathan separating us, keeping me busy and distracted while he worked with Valentina, controlling the narrative and the relationship. That's very thoughtful, I said, matching his pleasant tone. But I'd prefer to stay with Valentina during her meetings, if that's all right. I want to understand every aspect of this process. Something flickered across Nathan's face. Surprise, maybe, or irritation quickly masked. Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable. You're welcome in all the sessions. He didn't like it. I could tell. But he was too polished, too media-trained to push back in front of witnesses. The morning sessions were intense. Patent attorneys explained intellectual property protection. Engineers discussed manufacturing scalability. Marketing people talked about positioning and target demographics. Throughout it all, Valentina was brilliant, asking informed questions and holding her own with people twice her age. I watched Nathan watching her. Really watched him. And I started to see something I hadn't expected. He was genuinely impressed. Not the fake enthusiasm of someone going through the motions, but real interest in Valentina's ideas, her approach, her potential. He asked technical questions that showed he'd studied her project in depth. He challenged her assumptions in ways that made her think harder, dig deeper. For brief moments, I could almost see what might have been. Father and daughter, working together, sharing the same passion for innovation and social impact. Then I'd remember the text message threatening legal action, and the moment would pass. During lunch, catered, naturally, with options that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a week, Nathan sat across from Valentina and me. "Your device really is exceptional," he said to Valentina. "The elegance of the design, the cost efficiency, the user interface. Most professional engineers with decades of experience couldn't have developed something this sophisticated." Valentina beamed. "Thank you. My mom helped a lot with understanding the medical device regulations and sourcing components. We've always worked on projects together." "Really?" Nathan glanced at me with mild interest. "You have an engineering background, Ms. Rivera?" This was my opening. I could tell him right now. "Actually, we met 13 years ago at a tech mixer in Austin. I was finishing my biomedical engineering degree. You don't remember me, do you, Nathan?" But Valentina was sitting right there, happy and excited, living her dream. "I couldn't do it. Not yet. I studied biomedical engineering in college," I said instead. "But life took me in a different direction after graduation." "That's a shame. The field needs more people who understand both the technical and practical sides." He turned back to Valentina. "You're lucky to have that kind of support at home. A lot of young innovators don't have anyone who understands what they're trying to accomplish." The irony was suffocating. Nathan Cross, explaining to his daughter how lucky she was to have a supportive parent, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd refused to be that parent. Valentina launched into a story about how we'd built the first prototype at our kitchen table, how I'd helped her troubleshoot problems at 2 a.m, how we'd celebrated every small breakthrough together. Nathan listened, nodding, but I saw something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Wistfulness? Regret? Or was I projecting what I wanted to see? The afternoon brought meetings with potential investors. Nathan had arranged a video conference with 3 venture capital firms interested in healthcare technology startups. They asked Valentina questions about market size, competitive advantages, and scaling strategies. She handled it beautifully, but I could see her getting overwhelmed. This was business territory she'd never navigated before. Adult conversations about millions of dollars, equity stakes, and long-term projections. Nathan stepped in smoothly when she struggled, translating her technical vision into business language the investors understood. He was protecting her, I realized, making sure she didn't get pressured into commitments she wasn't ready for. It would have been touching if he wasn't the same man who'd walked away from protecting her before she was even born. By 5 o'clock, Valentina was exhausted, but exhilarated. Nathan had his assistant call our driver to take us to our hotel, another luxury accommodation he was paying for, and told us he'd pick us up at 7 for dinner. I thought we'd go somewhere quieter, he said, away from the office environment. Just the three of us, so we can talk about next steps without all the corporate pressure. That sounds perfect, Valentina said before I could respond. Back at the hotel, she collapsed on one of the beds. Mommy, today was incredible. Did you see how Mr. Cross protected me in that investor meeting? He didn't let them push me around or try to take advantage. I saw. He's not what I expected. I mean, I knew he was successful, but he actually cares about helping people. About making sure young inventors don't get exploited. She sat up, eyes bright. Do you think he has kids of his own? The question hit me like a physical blow. I don't think so, I managed to say. I haven't seen any mention of children in his background. That's too bad. He'd be a great dad, don't you think? He's so patient and encouraging. I turned away, pretending to look through my suitcase. Why don't you rest before dinner? It's been a long day. Good idea. I want to be sharp tonight. Mr. Cross said he wants to discuss long-term vision, and I need to show him I'm thinking beyond just the prototype. While Valentina showered, I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone, staring at Nathan's LinkedIn profile. There was a post from 3 days ago about meeting Valentina at the Tech Summit. Had the privilege of meeting an extraordinary young innovator this week, he'd written. Valentina Rivera's accessible health monitoring system represents exactly the kind of thinking we need, technology that serves everyone, not just the privileged few. Excited to support her journey through our mentorship program. The future of healthcare innovation is in good hands. The post had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments praising Nathan's commitment to mentoring youth, his vision for accessible healthcare, his generosity. No one knew that the extraordinary young innovator he was mentoring was the daughter he'd abandoned. The daughter he'd told me was my choice to live with. I scrolled through the comments until one stopped me cold. It was from Victoria Ashford Cross, Nathan's wife. So proud of you for investing in the next generation. Your commitment to making healthcare accessible continues to inspire me. Can't wait to meet this brilliant young woman. She wanted to meet Valentina. Nathan's wife wanted to meet his daughter, and neither of them had any idea they were already connected. The situation was spiraling into something more complex than I'd anticipated. This wasn't just about Nathan anymore. There was a whole life he'd built, a wife who seemed genuinely proud of his charitable work, a company full of people who believed in his mission. How many of them knew the truth about who Nathan really was? How many knew that his commitment to accessible healthcare had started as my dream, shared during late-night conversations with a girlfriend he'd discarded the moment she became inconvenient? Mommy, which dress should I wear to dinner? Valentina emerged from the bathroom, holding up 2 options. The blue one is more professional, but the gray one is nicer. The gray one, I said. This is a celebration, not a job interview. She grinned and disappeared back into the bathroom. I heard her humming, happy and hopeful. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. Somewhere out there was Nathan's mansion in Palo Alto, the life he'd built while I was working double shifts and raising our daughter alone. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. How is it going, Mija? Has he figured it out yet? I typed back. No.
Dinner tonight.
Still deciding what to do. Her response came immediately. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons. Not revenge. Justice. Justice. What did justice even look like in this situation? I thought about Valentina's question. He'd be a great dad, don't you think? The truth was, watching him with her today, I could see that he probably would be. The Nathan who'd spent hours working with Valentina, protecting her from predatory investors, genuinely caring about her success. That person could have been a good father. But he'd chosen not to be. And that choice had consequences that couldn't be erased by a day of mentorship and corporate generosity. At 7 sharp, there was a knock on our hotel room door. I opened it to find Nathan standing there, no longer in business casual, but in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. He'd showered and shaved, and for a disorienting moment, I was 22 again, opening my apartment door to find him waiting to take me to dinner. "Good evening," he said with that easy smile. "Ready for the best Italian food in San Francisco?" Valentina grabbed her purse, practically bouncing with excitement. Absolutely. The restaurant was in North Beach, intimate and clearly expensive. The kind of place where they don't list prices on the menu and the sommelier recommends wine pairings. We were seated at a corner table with a view of the city lights. Nathan ordered wine for himself and me, sparkling cider for Valentina. When the waiter left, he raised his glass.
"To Valentina," he said.
"And to the incredible mother who raised such a remarkable young woman." We clinked glasses, and I took a long sip of wine I couldn't really taste. Across the table, Nathan looked relaxed and genuine. This was a man comfortable in his success, certain of his place in the world. That certainty was about to shatter. "I wanted this dinner to be more personal," Nathan began, "because what I'm about to propose goes beyond a standard mentorship program." Valentina leaned forward, listening intently. "Crosstech wants to invest in bringing your device to market. Not just advise, but actually fund the development, manufacturing, and distribution. In exchange, we'd like to offer you an equity partnership. You'd retain majority ownership, but we'd provide the resources and infrastructure to scale this properly." Valentina's mouth fell open. "You want to make my project into a real company?" "Not just a company, a subsidiary of Crosstech, with you as the primary inventor and stakeholder. When you turn 18, you'd have the option to step into a leadership role or continue as a consultant while you pursue your education. Either way, you'd benefit financially from every unit sold." I don't even know what to say." Nathan smiled. "Say you'll think about it. Obviously, this is a conversation you and your mother need to have privately. There are legal implications, contracts to review. I don't expect an answer tonight."
He turned to me.
"Ms. Rivera, I know this is a lot to consider. I want to assure you that our legal team will work with any attorney you choose to retain. This isn't about taking advantage of Valentina's youth. It's about recognizing exceptional talent and providing the support to nurture it." This was the moment. He was offering my daughter everything I'd ever dreamed of. Financial security, professional opportunity, a chance to make a real difference in the world. And he had no idea he was offering it to his own child. "That's an incredibly generous offer," I said carefully. "But you're right, this requires serious consideration. Valentina is still a minor, and any decision like this needs to be made with full understanding of the implications." "Of course. Take all the time you need." Nathan turned back to Valentina. "I also want you to understand why I'm making this offer. It's not just about the device, though that's brilliant. It's about your approach to problem solving. You saw people in your community struggling to afford basic health monitoring, and instead of accepting that as inevitable, you created a solution. That's the kind of thinking that changes industries." Valentina was glowing under his praise. "My mom always taught me that technology should solve real problems for real people, not just make rich people richer." "Your mother is absolutely right." Nathan looked at me with what seemed like genuine respect. "That philosophy is what drives Crosstech too. We could have focused on premium products for wealthy hospitals, but we chose to work with community clinics and underserved populations instead. It's more meaningful work, even if it's not always the most profitable path." The irony was unbearable. Nathan was praising the philosophy I'd taught our daughter, endorsing the values I'd instilled while raising her alone, complimenting the parenting he'd refused to participate in. Our food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Nathan asked Valentina about school, her other interests, her plans for college. She told him about the robotics club she'd joined, the AP classes she was taking, her dream of studying at MIT or Stanford. Both excellent choices, Nathan said. I have connections at both universities. When the time comes, I'd be happy to write a recommendation letter. Really? That would be amazing. Valentina paused. Can I ask you something kind of personal? Of course. How did you know this was what you wanted to do with your life? Like, when did you realize you wanted to build technology that helps people? Nathan was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. I watched him carefully, wondering if he'd tell the truth or another version of the sanitized origin story he told reporters. Honestly, he finally said, I didn't always have that clarity. When I was younger, I was more focused on success for its own sake. Making money, building a reputation, proving myself. It wasn't until later that I realized success without purpose is pretty empty. What changed? Valentina asked. He looked uncomfortable, and I wondered if this was the closest he'd come to genuine vulnerability in years. I made some choices in my 20s that I'm not proud of. Choices that prioritized my ambitions over other things, other people. Eventually, I realized that the only way to live with those choices was to build something that mattered, to use whatever success I achieved to help people who needed it. It was the closest thing to an admission of guilt I'd heard from him. Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement of specific wrongs, but at least a recognition that he'd hurt people in his climb to the top. I think that's really honest, Valentina said. A lot of successful people pretend they were always good, always knew the right thing to do. I respect that you can admit you made mistakes. Nathan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do after, whether we grow from them or just repeat the same patterns. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. And what about the people hurt by those mistakes? Do they get a say in whether the amends are sufficient? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. Both Nathan and Valentina looked at me in surprise. That's a fair point, Nathan said slowly. I suppose they should. Though in my experience, some bridges get burned beyond repair. Sometimes the best you can do is learn from the past and try to do better going forward, even if you can't fix what you broke. How convenient, I said, for the person who did the breaking. Valentina looked confused. Mommy, what?
I am sorry, he interrupted, forcing a smile.
That was unnecessarily harsh. I think I'm just tired from the long day. Nathan was studying me now with more attention than he'd given me all day. No need to apologize. You're absolutely right to push back. Accountability matters. I've benefited from privileges that let me move past my mistakes more easily than most people could. That's something I try to remain conscious of. The waiter arrived to clear our plates and take dessert orders. The moment passed, but something had shifted. Nathan kept glancing at me throughout dessert, a small crease between his eyebrows like he was trying to solve a puzzle. After dinner, Nathan's driver took us back to the hotel. Before we got out of the car, Nathan handed me his personal cell phone number, written on the back of a business card. For anything you need, he said. Questions about the contract, concerns about the partnership, or just someone to talk through the decision. I know I'm offering you a lot to consider, and I want you to feel supported throughout the process. Thank you, I said, pocketing the card. And Ms. Rivera? He caught my eye. I meant what I said at dinner. Accountability matters. If you have concerns about how this partnership would affect Valentina, please voice them. I want this to be right for her, not just good for Crosstech. Back in the hotel room, Valentina immediately called my mother to share the news about the investment offer. I could hear my mother's excited squeals through the phone. I stepped out onto the small balcony, needing air. Below, the city stretched out in all directions, millions of lights representing millions of lives. How many of those people were carrying secrets like mine? How many were standing at crossroads, trying to decide between silence and truth? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Nathan. Just wanted to make sure you both got back to the hotel safely. Sleep well. I stared at the message. He'd given me his personal number. Direct access to the man who'd blocked me 13 years ago, who'd threatened legal action if I continued to contact him about our child. I could respond right now, could tell him everything via text, watch his world implode from a safe distance. Instead, I typed, "We're here safely. Thank you for dinner and for the opportunity. We'll be in touch soon about the partnership." His response came quickly. "Take your time. This is a big decision." Though I have to say, spending today with Valentina has been one of the highlights of my year. She's truly special. She is, I typed back. She always has been. I almost added more. Almost wrote, even when she was a baby you never met. Even when she was learning to walk while you were raising venture capital. Even when she was asking why her daddy didn't want her while you were building your empire. But I deleted it and just sent, "Good night." Inside, Valentina had finished her call and was getting ready for bed. Abuela is so excited she's crying. She wants to call everyone in the family to tell them. I'm sure she does. "Mommy, are you okay? You seemed kind of off at dinner." I sat on the edge of her bed.
Ai fine, Mia.
Just processing everything. This is a huge opportunity, and I want to make sure we approach it carefully. "You don't trust Mr. Cross." It wasn't a question. I don't know him well enough to trust him yet, I said honestly. He seems genuine, and he's clearly brilliant. But business partnerships are complicated, especially when one party has all the power and resources. He's not trying to take advantage of me, Mommy. I can tell. Maybe not intentionally. But powerful people don't always realize when they're being unfair. They're used to getting what they want, and they've learned how to make it seem like they're doing you a favor, even when they're benefiting more than you are. Valentina was quiet for a moment. "This is about my dad again, isn't it? You're projecting." Her words hit harder than I expected. "Maybe I am," I admitted. "But that doesn't mean I'm wrong to be cautious. I know you got hurt, and I know it made you careful. But Mr. Cross isn't the man who abandoned you. He's trying to help me. Can't you see the difference?" If only she knew there was no difference. They were the same person. "You're right," I said, because what else could I say? "I'll try to be more open-minded. But promise me you'll let me review any contracts before you sign anything, okay? Let me use my caution to protect you, even if it seems excessive." "I promise." She hugged me tight. "I love you, Mommy. I know none of this would be happening without everything you've done for me. I love you too, Mija. More than anything." After she fell asleep, I lay awake in the darkness, Nathan's text messages glowing on my phone screen. He'd sent one more. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner. About the people hurt by our mistakes deserving a say. You're right. I've spent years telling myself that moving forward was enough, but maybe it's not. Maybe some debts can't be repaid by just doing better in the future." Was this guilt? Genuine reflection? Or was Nathan just performing introspection the way he performed everything else? Carefully, strategically, always aware of his audience? I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to give him absolution through a stranger's validation of his vague regrets. The next morning, our flight back to Austin wasn't until 2, so Nathan had arranged one final meeting, breakfast with his wife, Victoria. "She's been asking to meet you both," he texted. "She runs a foundation that supports women in STEM, and she's very interested in Valentina's story. No pressure if you'd rather skip it, but I thought it might be valuable for Valentina to meet another woman who's navigated the tech world." Valentina was thrilled at the prospect. I was nauseous. We met them at a restaurant near our hotel. Victoria was even more polished in person than in photos, blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, elegant but understated jewelry, the kind of natural beauty that came from expensive skincare and regular exercise. She greeted Valentina with genuine warmth. "I've heard so much about you. Nathan couldn't stop talking about your device last night. He was up until midnight researching the manufacturing implications." "Really?" Valentina beamed. "Really. When he gets excited about an innovation, he becomes completely obsessed. It's one of the things I love about him, that genuine passion for ideas that can change lives. Victoria turned to me. And you must be the amazing mother behind this brilliant girl. Nathan told me you studied biomedical engineering. A lifetime ago, I said. I didn't finish the graduate work I'd planned. That's so common for women in our field. The system isn't designed to support us through major life transitions. She glanced at my left hand, noting the absence of a wedding ring. Single motherhood and advanced degrees don't mix well in this country, unfortunately. No, they don't. Well, Valentina is lucky to have had your support regardless. Not every parent has the technical background to nurture that kind of talent.
Victoria smiled warmly.
I run a foundation specifically focused on supporting women who had to pause or redirect their careers due to family obligations. If you're ever interested in getting back into the field, I'd love to talk about our programs. She was being kind, genuinely kind, and it made everything so much worse. This woman had no idea she was offering career support to the ex-girlfriend her husband had abandoned. No idea that the brilliant teenager she was praising was her husband's biological daughter. No idea that her entire perfect life was built on Nathan's ability to walk away from his responsibilities. Over breakfast, Victoria told Valentina about her own journey through the tech world. The sexism she'd faced, the mentors who'd helped her, the importance of finding sponsors and not just mentors, people with power who would actively advocate for you, not just advise you. Nathan is good at this, she said, touching her husband's arm affectionately. He uses his influence to open doors for people who'd otherwise get overlooked. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with him, that commitment to equity and accessibility. Nathan looked uncomfortable with the praise. I just try to support good ideas and good people. He's being modest, Victoria continued. Last year, he personally funded scholarships for 15 students from underserved communities to attend top engineering programs. He mentors at least a dozen young entrepreneurs at any given time. And he's pushed Crosstech to prioritize community impact over maximum profit, even when our board pushes back. I watched Nathan as his wife cataloged his virtues. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, not like someone basking in admiration, but like someone who knew he didn't deserve it.
Good.
He shouldn't be comfortable. That's very admirable, I said. Though I imagine it's easier to prioritize community impact when you're already financially secure. The real test of character is how people behave when they have something to lose. Victoria nodded enthusiastically, missing the edge in my tone. Absolutely. That's exactly what I tell the women in our foundation programs. We talk a lot about how success changes people or reveals who they really were all along. And which do you think it does? I asked, looking directly at Nathan. Change people or reveal them? He met my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I saw recognition. Not of my face, but of the fact that I was asking questions with layers he couldn't quite parse. Both, probably, he said slowly. I think crisis reveals character, but sustained success can definitely change it. Not always for the better. Nathan went through a difficult period in his 20s, Victoria said, oblivious to the tension. Before we met. He doesn't talk about it much, but I know it shaped how he approaches business and relationships now. Sometimes our worst moments teach us the most important lessons. What kind of difficult period? Valentina asked, curious. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Just some personal mistakes that taught me about priorities and accountability. Nothing worth dwelling on now. I think it's worth dwelling on, I said quietly. The people affected by our mistakes don't get to just move past them because we've learned our lessons. They're still living with the consequences. Victoria looked confused by the sudden tension. Nathan was staring at me with full attention now, the polite distance gone from his expression. Ms. Rivera, have we met before? He asked suddenly. Before the tech summit, I mean. There's something familiar. No, I interrupted, my heart racing. We haven't met. It wasn't time yet. Not with Valentina sitting right here, not with Victoria looking between us with growing concern. I apologize if I've made things awkward. I continued, forcing my voice to lighten. I think I'm just protective of Valentina and overly cautious about business relationships. Occupational hazard of single motherhood. The tension eased slightly, though Nathan continued to watch me with that puzzled expression. The rest of breakfast passed in safer conversation. Victoria gave Valentina her contact information and made her promise to reach out if she ever needed advice or support. Nathan mentioned another follow-up meeting in 2 weeks to discuss contract specifics. As we were leaving, Nathan pulled me aside while Victoria and Valentina exchanged final pleasantries. I feel like I've offended you somehow, he said quietly. If I have, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. You haven't offended me. Then what is it? Because there's clearly something making you uncomfortable with this partnership, and I'd rather address it directly than let it fester. I looked at him standing there, genuinely confused, genuinely trying to be considerate. The man who'd threatened me with lawyers now wanted to address my concerns directly. The irony was almost funny. You really don't remember me, do you? I said softly. His brow furrowed. Remember you from where? Austin. 13 years ago. A tech mixer, where you told a biomedical engineering student that she was brilliant and going to change the world. I watched the color drain from his face. Watched his eyes widen as he really looked at me for the first time. Watched the pieces start to connect. Camila, he whispered. Yes. His gaze shot to Valentina, who was laughing at something Victoria had said. I saw him doing the math. Saw the exact moment he understood. He couldn't finish the sentence. 15 years old. Born 9 months after you blocked my number and threatened me with legal action if I ever contacted you again about the pregnancy that was apparently my choice to live with. Nathan stumbled backward like I'd physically struck him. His face had gone from pale to gray. Oh my God. The brilliant young innovator you've been mentoring? The extraordinary talent you want to invest in? The girl whose mother you praised for raising someone so remarkable? I kept my voice low but steady. That's your daughter, Nathan. The one you abandoned. I didn't know, I never. He couldn't seem to form coherent thoughts. Of course you didn't know. You made sure you wouldn't know. You erased us so completely that you couldn't even recognize me standing in front of you. Camila, he reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Don't. We're not doing this here, not now. Valentina doesn't know who you are, and I'm not having that conversation in a restaurant with your wife 10 feet away. She doesn't know? His voice cracked. You never told her I'm her father? I told her that her father left before she was born and wanted nothing to do with us. I just never mentioned his name. Why would I? You were nothing to us. You made sure of that. Nathan looked like he might throw up. He glanced at Victoria, then at Valentina, then back at me. What do you want?
Money?
Is that what this is about? The question ignited something cold and furious in my chest. You think I orchestrated this? You think I somehow manipulated my 15-year-old daughter into creating a brilliant medical device and winning a tech competition just to extort you? Is that seriously what you think is happening? No, I don't understand. This was a coincidence, Nathan. A cosmic joke. The universe putting you in a room with a daughter you threw away, letting you see exactly what you missed, who she became without you. I took a breath, steadying myself. But now that you know, now that you can't unknow it, we need to figure out what happens next. I need time. I need to think. You don't get time. You get to decide right now whether you walk away again, or whether you finally take responsibility for the child you created. That's not fair, Nathan said, his voice shaking. You can't just drop this on me and demand an immediate answer. Fair. I almost laughed. You want to talk about fair? I was 7 months pregnant when you sent that text calling me a harasser. I was 22 years old, terrified, and alone. You didn't give me time to think. You just disappeared. I was 25 and stupid and scared. And now you're 38 and successful and still making this about you. I glanced over at Valentina, making sure she was still occupied with Victoria. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to walk over there, say goodbye politely, and go to the airport. You're going to go home and figure out what you want to do. And then you're going to call me and tell me whether you want to be part of Valentina's life or whether you want to disappear again. What about Victoria? What about? Your wife is your problem to deal with. Your company is your problem. Your reputation is your problem. All of it is yours to figure out. The only thing I care about is Valentina and whether having you in her life will help her or hurt her. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Does she know I'm here? Did you tell her to apply to this competition because you knew I'd be involved? She has no idea. She applied because her teacher nominated her. I didn't even know you were the sponsor until I saw the program at the ceremony. This whole thing was pure chance. But you didn't tell me. You stood there and let me. He stopped, realization dawning. You were testing me, watching to see what kind of person I'd become. I was protecting my daughter. There's a difference. And what did you conclude? What kind of person am I? I looked at him carefully. You're better than you were. You actually care about helping people now, or at least you've convinced yourself you do. You were good with Valentina, patient and encouraging. You could probably be a decent father. But that doesn't erase 13 years of absence. It doesn't undo the damage of her growing up wondering why her father didn't want her. And it doesn't mean you deserve a place in her life just because you've finally developed a conscience. Valentina's voice carried over to us. Mommy, we should probably head to the airport soon. Coming, Mija? I called back. I turned to Nathan one last time. You have 48 hours to decide. Call me and tell me what you want. If I don't hear from you, I'll know you've made your choice again. And if I want to tell her, if I want to try, then we do it carefully on her timeline, with her emotional well-being as the priority. Not your guilt, not your need for redemption. Her.
Camille, I'm sorry.
I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know. I'm sorry for what I did to you. To both of you. I don't need your apology, Nathan. I needed child support and a partner 13 years ago. What I need now is for you to think very carefully about whether you're ready to actually be a father or whether you're just performing guilt. I walked away from him, back to where Valentina and Victoria stood waiting. Everything okay? Victoria asked, noticing Nathan's pale expression. Fine, I said smoothly. Just discussing some details about the partnership timeline. We said our goodbyes. Victoria hugged Valentina and told her to stay in touch. Nathan shook her hand, and I watched him try to memorize her features, seeing his daughter clearly for the first time. In the car to the airport, Valentina was quiet. What did you and Mr. Cross talk about? She finally asked. Just clarifying some expectations, I said. Nothing for you to worry about. He looked upset. Did you say something that bothered him? I think I just gave him something unexpected to think about. The flight back to Austin felt endless. Valentina dozed beside me, exhausted from the excitement and overwhelmed by everything that had happened. I sat rigid in my seat, my mind replaying the conversation with Nathan over and over. I'd given him 48 hours. 2 days to decide whether to claim his daughter or abandon her a second time. 2 days for me to figure out what I actually wanted the outcome to be. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. Part of me wanted him to disappear again. It would be cleaner that way, simpler. Valentina would never have to know that the mentor she admired was the father who'd rejected her. We could decline the cross-tech partnership, cite some vague concern about maintaining independence, and go back to our lives. But another part of me, the part that had watched him with Valentina, that had seen genuine care and interest in his eyes, wondered if maybe she deserved the chance to know him. Not the 25-year-old coward who'd run away, but the man he'd become. And then there was the ugliest part, the part one didn't want to acknowledge, the part that wanted him to suffer. that wanted him to know exactly what he'd missed, to grieve for all those years of Valentina's childhood he'd thrown away, to live with the guilt of knowing he'd abandoned something precious. When we got home, my mother was waiting with dinner prepared and questions in her eyes. I shook my head slightly, not now, not in front of Valentina. Over the next 2 days, I went through the motions of normal life while my phone sat like a bomb in my pocket. Work, dinner, helping Valentina with homework, pretending everything was fine. Valentina, meanwhile, was floating on air. She told everyone at school about the cross-tech offer. Her teachers were proud. Her friends were jealous in that adolescent way. The local newspaper wanted to do a story about the Austin teen who caught the eye of Silicon Valley. They want to interview us both, Valentina said excitedly. You and me, talking about how we developed the device together. They said it's a great human interest angle, single mom and daughter team, making it big. Let's hold off on press until we've finalized the partnership details, I said, buying time. You're still not sure about Mr. Cross, are you? I looked at my daughter, so brilliant and perceptive. I'm just being careful, Mija. This is a huge decision that will affect your whole future. I want to make sure we're making it for the right reasons. What if we just trust that good things can happen? That not everyone has an ulterior motive? If only it were that simple. The 48 hours came and went. My phone didn't ring. On the third day, I started to feel something I hadn't expected. Disappointment. Not for myself. I'd stopped expecting anything from Nathan Cross years ago. But for Valentina, who didn't even know she was being rejected a second time. On the fourth day, a package arrived at our apartment. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folder of legal documents. The letter was addressed to me. Camila, I've spent the last 4 days trying to figure out what to say, what to do, how to make this right. The truth is, there's no way to make this right. I can't undo the choice I made 13 years ago. I can't give Valentina back her childhood, or you back the years you spent struggling alone. I've drafted the enclosed documents with my personal attorney. They establish a trust fund for Valentina with $5 million accessible when she turns 18 for education, business ventures, or whatever she chooses. There's also a separate account with 13 years of back child support, calculated at what would have been appropriate given my current income trajectory. I know it doesn't make up for the actual years when you needed it, but it's something. Additionally, I'm prepared to fund her education fully, wherever she chooses to go. MIT, Stanford, Harvard, tuition, housing, everything covered. The cross-tech partnership offer stands, regardless of anything else. Her device deserves to exist, and I want to help make that happen, whether or not she ever knows who I am. What I'm not doing is making demands. I'm not asking to see her, or telling her who I am, or inserting myself into her life. That decision is entirely yours. If you think she's better off not knowing, I'll respect that. If you want me to disappear completely, I'll do that too. But if you decide to tell her, if you think there's any possibility that having me in her life could be good for her, I want to try. Not because I deserve it, but because she deserves to make that choice for herself. I told Victoria everything. She's furious with me, hurt in ways I'm not sure can be healed. She's also insisted that if Valentina wants any kind of relationship, she wants to be part of it. She said any child who's been abandoned deserves all the love available, even if it comes from unexpected places. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know money doesn't fix what I did. But I'm trying to take responsibility in the only ways I know how. The choice is yours, Camila. It always should have been a choice we made together, but I took that from you. I won't make that mistake again. Whatever you decide, please know that meeting Valentina, watching her present, seeing her brilliance, understanding what an incredible person she is, it's shown me exactly what I threw away. I'll live with that for the rest of my life. Nathan. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking. Then I opened the legal documents. He wasn't lying. $5 million in a trust fund. Another account with $847,000. 13 years of calculated child support. Education funding with no caps or restrictions. All of it legally binding, no strings attached, no requirements for access or visitation. He was trying to buy his way to redemption. Or maybe just buy his way out of guilt. But it was also more than most absent fathers ever did. More than I'd ever expected from him. I heard Valentina's bedroom door open. Quickly, I shoved the papers back in the envelope and hid it in my room. Mommy, did something come in the mail? I thought I heard the door. Just some work documents. I lied. Nothing important. That night, after Valentina went to bed, I called my mother and told her everything. The confrontation with Nathan, the letter, the money, all of it. Dios mío, she breathed. What are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to take the money and tell him to stay away. Use his guilt to give Valentina the future she deserves without having to let him into her life. And the other part? The other part keeps thinking about how happy she was working with him, how much she admired him, how she said he'd be a great father. My voice cracked. What if I'm keeping her from something good because I'm still angry about the past? Or what if you're protecting her from getting hurt when he decides being a father is harder than he thought and disappears again? That too. My mother was quiet for a long moment. This isn't a decision you can make alone, Mija. Valentina is 15, not 5. She's smart enough to handle the truth and old enough to have a say in this. How do I tell her? How do I explain that the mentor she admires, the CEO offering her everything she's dreamed of, is the father who abandoned her? Carefully, honestly, and with love.
I didn't tell her that night. Or the next day.
Or the day after that. Instead, I watched Valentina move through her life, chattering about the cross-tech partnership, making plans for her future, completely unaware that everything was about to change. A week after the letter arrived, Nathan's assistant called to schedule the contract review meeting. Professional, polite, completely normal. Mr. Cross wanted me to confirm whether you'd retained legal counsel to review the partnership documents, she said. If not, he's happy to recommend several attorneys who specialize in startup agreements and have no connection to CrossTech. That's very thoughtful, I said. Can I get back to you in a few days? Of course. And Ms. Rivera? Mr. Cross asked me to tell you there's no rush. He understands this is a big decision and wants you to take whatever time you need. After I hung up, Valentina looked at me with concern. Why do we need more time? I thought we were doing this.
We are. Probably.
I just want to make sure we understand everything before we commit. You're scared, she said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation.
I'm cautious.
Because of my dad. Because he made promises and broke them, and now you think everyone will. The conversation was veering into dangerous territory. Valentina. It's okay, Mommy. I get it. I know what he did hurt you. But Mr. Cross isn't him. He's different. The urge to tell her right then was almost overwhelming. To say, actually, he's exactly him. They're the same person. The man offering you everything is the man who gave you nothing. But I couldn't. Not without a plan, not without thinking through every possible consequence. That night, I finally opened the envelope from Nathan again and read through the legal documents more carefully. Tucked at the back was a second, shorter letter I'd missed before. Camila, one more thing I need to say. If you decide to tell Valentina the truth, I'll understand if she hates me. I'll understand if she wants nothing to do with me. I'll understand if you both want me to fulfill the financial obligations and stay out of your lives completely. But please don't let my failures affect the partnership. Her device deserves to exist. Please don't let your very justified anger at me stop her from having this opportunity. If you need me to step back from the mentorship personally, I will. I'll have someone else from CrossTech handle the relationship. But don't let her lose this chance because of my mistakes.
And
even in his guilt, he was trying to control the narrative, making sure I knew that rejecting him meant potentially hurting Valentina's opportunities, making the choice harder by tying his presence to her success. Or maybe I was being unfair. Maybe he genuinely was trying to separate his personal failings from a legitimate business opportunity. I didn't know anymore. I couldn't see clearly through 13 years of anger and pain and survival. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, when Valentina came home from school crying. What happened? I asked immediately, pulling her into my arms. There's this girl at school, Madison. Her dad is a lawyer, and she was talking about how her parents are getting divorced because her dad has another family. Like a whole other family he kept secret for years. She has half-siblings she never knew about. My blood ran cold. And all I could think was, at least she had a dad for 15 years. At least she got that before it fell apart. And then I felt terrible for thinking that because she's devastated. Valentina pulled back, wiping her eyes. But Mommy, sometimes I wonder about him. My dad. Who he is, what he's like if he ever thinks about me. This was the moment. The universe was practically screaming at me to tell her. What if I told you that you could know? I said quietly. Would you want to? She looked at me in confusion. What do you mean? I mean, what if there was a way to meet him, to know who he is? Would you want that, or would you rather keep things as they are? Did you find him? Is he trying to contact us? Something like that. But before I tell you anything, I need to know what you want. Because this will change things, Valentina. Once you know certain truths, you can't unknow them. She sat down heavily on the couch. Is he a bad person? He's complicated. He made terrible choices when he was younger, but he's tried to become better. He's not a villain, but he's not a hero either. He's just human. Flawed. Does he want to meet me? I think he wants the chance to try. But he knows he doesn't deserve it. Valentina was quiet for a long time, processing. You've been protecting me from something. That's why you've been weird about the cross-tech partnership. That's why you've been asking all these questions about trust and second chances. My daughter was too perceptive for her own good. Yes, I admitted. Is it him? Is Mr. Cross my father? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, could deny it, buy more time, keep her in the safe cocoon of not knowing. But she was looking at me with those dark eyes, Nathan's eyes, and I couldn't do it anymore. Yes, I whispered. Nathan Cross is your father. The color drained from her face. What? I didn't know he was the sponsor until the awards ceremony. He didn't recognize me, didn't realize who you were until I told him in San Francisco. You told him and didn't tell me? Her voice was rising, shock turning to hurt, turning to anger. You let me sit there having breakfast with him and his wife, admiring him, thinking he was this great person who wanted to help me, and the whole time you knew he was my dad, and you didn't say anything? I was trying to protect you. From what? From having a father? From having opportunities? She stood up, pacing. How long have you known? When were you planning to tell me? I've been trying to figure out the right way. There is no right way to tell someone that the person they've been admiring is the person who abandoned them. Tears were streaming down her face now. Did he know? When he was working with me, being so nice and encouraging, did he know I was his daughter? Not until I told him. Not until after breakfast that day. And what did he say? Did he even care? I pulled out the envelope, the letters, the legal documents. He sent this. Valentina read through everything with shaking hands. The letters, the trust fund documents, the child support calculations, all of it. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not just hurt or anger, but something deeper. Betrayal. $5 million, she said flatly. He thinks $5 million makes up for 15 years. I don't think he believes it makes up for anything. I think he's trying to take responsibility in the only way he knows how. By throwing money at the problem? By making himself feel better about what he did. She crumpled the letter in her fist. And you are just going to decide for me whether I got to know any of this? Valentina, you have to understand. Understand what? That you don't trust me to handle the truth? That you're going to keep lying to me about who he is. I wasn't lying. You were letting me think he was a stranger, letting me admire him, trust him, want to work with him, when the whole time he's the person who told you I was your choice to live with. Her voice cracked on the last words.
He didn't want me, Mommy.
He told you to get rid of the problem, and when you didn't, he just disappeared. And now he wants to be my mentor? My investor? Like that makes it okay? It doesn't make it okay. Nothing makes it okay. Then why are you even considering his offer? Why didn't you just tell him to stay away from us? Because it's not about what I want anymore. It's about what's best for you. And I don't know if keeping you from this opportunity, because I hate your father, is actually protecting you, or just punishing him. Valentina laughed, a bitter sound. So, I'm supposed to be grateful? Supposed to take his money and his mentorship and pretend it's not all just guilt? I don't know what you're supposed to do. That's why I needed to tell you. Because this is your choice now, not mine. She stood there, clutching the papers, tears streaming down her face. I need to think. I can't. I need to be alone. She went to her room and closed the door. I heard the lock click. I sat on the couch in the silent apartment, staring at the crumpled letter on the floor, and wondered if I'd just made everything worse. My mother came over an hour later. Valentina still hadn't come out of her room. How did she take it? My mother asked.
Badly.
She's angry at him, angry at me, angry at the whole situation. She has a right to be angry. I know. But I hate that I'm the one who put that pain in her eyes. I was trying to protect her, and instead I just made it worse. My mother sat beside me and took my hand. You did what you thought was right. Now she needs time to process. What if she decides she wants nothing to do with him? What if this ruins the partnership, ruins her opportunity? Then you support her decision. And you help her find another path to success. She's brilliant, Mija. This isn't her only chance. But it's the best chance. Crosstech has the resources, the connections, the expertise to really make her device available to the people who need it. Walking away from that because Nathan is her father, it feels like he wins again. Like he gets to take another dream away from us. Or maybe, my mother said gently, you let Valentina decide what winning looks like for her. 3 hours later, Valentina finally emerged from her room. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she looked calmer. I want to talk to him, she said. Okay, I can arrange that. Not with you there. Just me and him. I need to hear him explain himself. I need to look him in the eye and ask him why he didn't want me. My protective instinct screamed against it. Valentina, I don't think. I'm not asking permission, Mommy. I'm 15 years old. I'm old enough to know my own father abandoned me, so I'm old enough to ask him why. Her voice was steady now, determined. You can be there if you want, but you don't get to control what I say or how I react. This is my conversation. She was right. This was her pain, her loss, her choice. I'll contact him, I said. I sent Nathan a text that night. Valentina knows. She wants to meet you.
Just the two of you.
Are you willing? His response came within minutes. Yes. Anytime, anywhere. Thank you for telling her. I know that wasn't easy. She's angry. You need to be prepared for that. I know. I deserve her anger. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about what she needs. Understood. Just tell me when and where. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near our apartment the following Saturday. Neutral territory. Public enough to feel safe, private enough to have difficult conversations. The days leading up to the meeting were tense. Valentina barely spoke to me, still processing her hurt and anger. She went to school, did her homework, went through the motions, but the light that usually animated her was dimmed. I'd broken something between us by keeping the secret. I knew it, and I didn't know how to fix it. Friday night, she finally spoke to me beyond the bare minimum. I've been reading about him, she said. About Crosstech, about his interviews, about all the things he says about accessible healthcare and helping people. And it's all the stuff you used to talk about. The ideas you had before you got pregnant with me. He took your dreams and built his empire on them. Maybe. Or maybe we just had similar values and he actually followed through while I couldn't. Because of me. Because he left you to raise me alone while he got to pursue everything you wanted.
Valentina, no.
You were never the problem. You were never what held me back.
He was.
His choice to leave was what changed my path, not your existence. But if he'd stayed, if he'd been a partner like he should have been, you could have built all of this too. You could have been the CEO creating accessible medical devices. Instead, you're doing data entry while he's worth billions. The unfairness of it hit me all over again. She was right. In another timeline, one where Nathan had been a decent person, we could have built something together. My expertise, his software skills, both of our passions for helping underserved communities. But that wasn't this timeline. What's done is done, I said. We can't change the past. We can only decide what we do now. What do you want me to do? With him, with the partnership, with all of it. I looked at my daughter, her face so serious, asking me to make this decision for her when I'd just learned that I couldn't. I can't tell you what to do, Mija. This has to be your choice. But what would you do? If you were me? I thought carefully before answering. I would listen to what he has to say. I would ask him every hard question I needed answers to. And then I would decide based on who he is now, not just who he was 13 years ago. Do you think people can really change that much? I think people can grow. Whether that growth is real or just performance, that's harder to know. But you're smart, Valentina. You'll be able to tell the difference. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Valentina changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple sweater. She wanted to look put together, but not like she was trying too hard. Do I look okay? She asked. You look beautiful. You always do.
I'm nervous.
Is that stupid? He's the one who should be nervous. You're both allowed to be nervous. This is hard for everyone. I drove her to the coffee shop and parked across the street. Nathan was already inside, sitting at a corner table, looking as nervous as I'd ever seen him. He dressed casually too, jeans and a sweater, probably trying not to seem intimidating. Do you want me to come in? I asked. Valentina shook her head. I need to do this alone. But stay close. In case I need you. I'll be right here. Text me if you need anything. She took a deep breath and got out of the car. I watched her walk across the street and into the coffee shop. Watched Nathan stand up when he saw her, his face a mixture of hope and terror. Watched them sit down across from each other, father and daughter, finally facing each other with the truth between them. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see their body language through the window. Valentina sitting rigid, arms crossed. Nathan leaning forward, earnest. Both of them looking uncomfortable and sad. The conversation lasted 2 hours. I sat in that car, gripping the steering wheel, watching my daughter confront the man who'd abandoned her. At one point, I saw Valentina wipe tears from her face. Nathan reached across the table, and she pulled back. He withdrew his hand immediately, looking devastated. Later, I saw him pull out his phone and show her something. Photos, maybe. She looked at the screen, her expression unreadable. They talked more. At one point, Nathan was the one wiping his eyes. Finally, Valentina stood up. Nathan stood too. There was an awkward moment where neither seemed to know what to do, and then Valentina walked toward the door. She got back in the car, and I could see she'd been crying hard. How did it go? I asked. Can we just drive? I'll tell you everything, but I need to not be here right now. I drove. Out of the city, toward the hills where we used to go when she was little, when we needed space to breathe and think. When we finally parked at a lookout point, Valentina started talking. He said he was terrified when you told him you were pregnant, that he'd just started thinking about launching his startup, and he panicked because a baby felt like it would destroy everything he was building. That's what he said 13 years ago, too. He knows. He said he spent the last 13 years trying to justify what he did, telling himself you'd be fine, that you didn't really need him, that he was too young and unprepared to be a father. He said he built the company partly to prove to himself that he'd made the right choice, that if he became successful enough, it would retroactively justify abandoning us. And now he says he knows there's no justification. That meeting me, seeing who I am, what we built without him, it showed him exactly what he threw away. He said the worst part is that he can see himself in me. The way I think about problems, the way I talk about wanting to help people. He said it's like looking at who he could have been if he hadn't been such a coward. I waited, letting her process.
He showed me photos of his wife, Victoria.
He said she knows everything now, and she told him that if I'm willing, she'd like to get to know me too. Not as a replacement for you, but as another person who could support me. How do you feel about that? I don't know. She seemed nice at breakfast. But it's weird, right? To have this whole other family out there that could have been mine if he'd just not been a terrible person? It's very weird. He also said the money isn't conditional. The trust fund, the child support, the education funding, it's all mine whether I ever speak to him again or not. He had his lawyer set it up so that you have complete control of how it's distributed until I'm 18, and then it's entirely up to me. That's good. Is it? Or is it just more guilt money? She turned to face me. Mommy, I'm so angry at him. For what he did to you, for what he took from both of us. But I'm also angry at myself because part of me wants to know him. Part of me wants to have a dad, even if he's a dad who failed me for 15 years. Those feelings can coexist, Mija. You can be angry and still want a relationship. They're not mutually exclusive. What if I let him in and he leaves again? What if being my dad is harder than he thinks and he decides it's not worth it? Then you'll survive it, the same way you've survived not having him all these years. You're strong, Valentina. Stronger than you know. I don't feel strong. I feel confused and sad and angry and hopeful all at the same time. That's what complicated situations feel like. There's no clear right answer, no obvious path forward. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the view. He asked if he could take me to dinner next week. Just the two of us. Said he wants to answer any questions I have, tell me about his life, learn about mine. He said there's no pressure, and I can say no if I'm not ready. What did you tell him? I said I'd think about it. We sat in silence for a while, both of us processing. The partnership, Valentina finally said. He wants to make sure I know that's separate from whether we have a personal relationship. He said if I decide I don't want him in my life, he'll transfer the mentorship to someone else at Crosstech, but the offer stands. How do you feel about that? I hate that he's trying to be fair about it. I hate that he's saying all the right things when he said all the wrong things 13 years ago. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Why couldn't he have been this person back then? Why did he have to fail us first before becoming someone worth knowing? I don't know, baby. People grow at different rates. Some people need to lose everything before they learn what matters. Is it wrong that I want to say yes? To the dinner, to getting to know him, maybe even to having him in my life? Does that make me disloyal to you? I pulled her into a hug. You could never be disloyal to me. Wanting to know your father doesn't diminish what we have. It doesn't erase everything we've been through together. But he hurt you so badly. And that's my pain to carry, not yours. You get to make this decision based on what you need, not on what you think I want or what will make me feel better. Valentina decided to say yes to dinner. Then to another dinner. Then to weekly meetings. Over the next 3 months, I watched my daughter cautiously build a relationship with her father. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when old anger flared up, conversations that ended in tears. But Nathan showed up. Every single time he showed up. He came to Austin every other weekend. He video called when he couldn't be there in person. He asked about her life, her school, her friends. He didn't try to buy her affection or act like the money made everything okay. He just tried to be present. Victoria came with him sometimes. She was careful, respectful, never trying to replace me but offering her own kind of support. She talked to Valentina about navigating the tech world as a woman, about handling pressure, about staying true to your values when success tries to compromise them. I hated how much I didn't hate her. The cross-tech partnership moved forward too. We'd retained our own attorney, paid for by Nathan, though he'd insisted we choose someone independent. The contract was fair, more than fair. Valentina retained majority ownership, had approval over all major decisions, and Crosstech's involvement was structured to support rather than control. My daughter's device was going into production. Real production with manufacturing partners and distribution channels and marketing campaigns. It was going to help people, thousands of people who couldn't afford traditional health monitoring systems. Everything I dreamed of building was happening. Just 15 years late, and with my daughter as the innovator instead of me. I tried not to be bitter about it. Tried to be happy that at least one of us was achieving those dreams. Most days I succeeded. But then Nathan announced that Crosstech was hosting a launch event for Valentina's device. A big public celebration with press coverage, industry leaders, potential investors. He wanted to honor Valentina's achievement and officially introduce her to the healthcare technology community. It'll be good publicity for the device, he'd explained. And it's a chance to celebrate what you've built, Mija. Valentina had been excited, until she'd asked the obvious question, what do we tell people? About who you are to me. Nathan had looked at me when he answered, that's entirely up to you and your mother. I'll support whatever you decide. That conversation had happened 2 weeks ago, and we still hadn't decided. The launch event was tomorrow night. A ballroom in downtown Austin, 200 guests, media coverage. Valentina's device would be unveiled, partnerships would be announced, speeches would be given. And everyone would be watching the dynamic between the billionaire CEO mentor and the teenage genius inventor, looking for the story. I want to tell them, Valentina said the night before the event. We were sitting at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd built the first prototype 3 years ago. Tell them what? I asked, though I knew. The truth. That Nathan Cross is my father. That he abandoned us 13 years ago, and now he's trying to make amends. That this partnership is complicated and personal and messy, but it's real. Valentina, that's going to create a media firestorm. People will have opinions, harsh opinions. They'll judge him, judge us, judge the whole situation. Let them judge. I'm tired of protecting secrets. Tired of pretending he's just my mentor when he's so much more complicated than that. Have you talked to Nathan about this?
Not yet.
I wanted to talk to you first, because this affects you too. The media will dig into everything. How you raised me alone, what happened between you and him. All of it. Are you okay with that? Was I okay with it? With the world knowing that Nathan Cross had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend? With my struggle becoming public consumption? With everyone seeing exactly how badly he'd failed us? Actually, yes. I was more than okay with it. If this is what you want, I support you completely, I said. She called Nathan that night and told him her decision. I couldn't hear his response, but I saw Valentina's expression soften. He said he'll stand up there and tell the truth himself if that's what I want, she said after hanging up. He said he's not ashamed of me, only of himself. And if public accountability is part of making this right, he'll accept that. The night of the launch event, I dressed carefully. Not the simple black dress I'd worn to previous events, but something my mother had insisted on buying me. Deep emerald green, elegant, the kind of dress that said I belonged in these rooms even if I'd never felt like I did. Valentina wore navy blue again, like at the tech summit where this all started. Full circle. Nathan had arranged for a car to pick us up. When we arrived at the venue, he was waiting near the entrance. Victoria stood beside him. You both look beautiful, he said, and there was genuine emotion in his voice. Are you ready for this? I asked. Once she says it publicly, there's no taking it back. I'm ready. I should have been ready 13 years ago, but better late than never. Victoria touched my arm gently. Thank you for sharing her with us. I know that's not easy. She's not mine to keep or share. She's her own person, making her own choices.
Still,
You raised an extraordinary human being, Camila. That's all you, regardless of who else enters the picture now. The ballroom was filled with exactly the kind of people I'd once imagined networking with: tech executives, healthcare administrators, venture capitalists, journalists. A different version of my life, one where Nathan hadn't left, where I'd finished my degree and built my career. But I had Valentina, and she had become something more remarkable than anything I could have built alone. The program began with a video showcasing the device's development and potential impact. Testimonials from community health clinics, demonstrations of the technology, projections of how many lives could be improved. Then Nathan took the stage. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. We're here to celebrate an innovation that embodies everything CrossTech stands for: accessible healthcare technology that serves everyone, not just the privileged few. The AccuHealth Monitor, developed by 15-year-old Valentina Rivera, will make health monitoring available to communities that have been systematically underserved by our healthcare system. Applause filled the room. Valentina stood beside me in the wings, nervous but determined. But before I invite Valentina to the stage, Nathan continued, I need to tell you a story. One I'm not proud of, but one that needs to be told. The room quieted. 15 years ago, I got my girlfriend pregnant. Her name was Camila Rivera. She was a biomedical engineering student with brilliant ideas about accessible healthcare technology, ideas that, if I'm being honest, inspired much of what CrossTech has built. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was 25, focused on my career, and I convinced myself that a child would derail everything I was working toward. I could hear the shocked murmurs starting. So I left. I blocked her number. I threatened legal action if she continued to contact me. I abandoned her when she was 7 months pregnant with my child, and I told myself I was making the smart choice. The necessary choice. Nathan's voice was shaking now, but he continued. I never paid $1 of child support. I never called to check if my daughter was okay. I never sent a birthday card or a Christmas gift. I erased them from my life completely because it was convenient for me. The room was dead silent now. That daughter is Valentina Rivera, the brilliant young woman whose device we're celebrating tonight. The teenager who created something remarkable without any support from her father, who grew up watching her mother work multiple jobs and still find time to nurture her talent and dreams. Valentina squeezed my hand. I met Valentina 4 months ago when she won the Silicon Valley Youth Innovation Summit. I had no idea who she was. Her mother, Camila, recognized me immediately, but she didn't say anything that night. She let me work with Valentina, let me mentor her, let me see exactly what kind of person my daughter had become without me. Nathan paused, visibly emotional. When Camila finally told me the truth, it destroyed me. Not because I'd been tricked or trapped, but because I was confronted with the reality of what I'd thrown away. This extraordinary young woman, this compassionate innovator who cares about helping people, she's my daughter, and I had nothing to do with creating who she is. That was all her mother's doing. Nathan looked directly at me in the wings, his eyes glistening with tears. Camila Rivera raised our daughter alone while I built an empire on the dreams she'd shared with me. She struggled and sacrificed and worked herself to exhaustion so that Valentina could have opportunities. She never badmouthed me to our daughter, never poisoned her against me, even though she had every right to. She just loved Valentina fiercely and taught her that technology should serve people, that success means nothing without purpose, that you help those who need it most. He turned back to the audience. I'm telling you this because Valentina deserves the truth to be public. She deserves people to know that her brilliance came from her own hard work and her mother's dedication, not from some genetic gift I passed down. She deserves credit for achieving all of this despite my absence, not because of any support I've provided. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. I also want to be clear about the cross-tech partnership. Yes, I'm Valentina's father. Yes, I've tried to make financial amends for 13 years of absence. But this partnership is happening because her device is exceptional and deserves to exist. If Camila and Valentina had decided they wanted nothing to do with me personally, Crosstech would still be backing this project. This isn't about my redemption. It's about making healthcare accessible to people who need it. Nathan took a breath. I can't undo my failures. I can't give Valentina back her childhood or Camila back the years she spent struggling. All I can do is show up now, take responsibility publicly, and try to be the father and partner I should have been from the beginning. Whether that's enough is up to them, not me. He gestured toward the wings. Valentina, would you come up here? My daughter walked onto that stage with her head high. When she reached Nathan, there was an awkward moment, and then she hugged him. Brief, but genuine. The audience erupted in applause. I saw people wiping their eyes, pulling out phones, frantically typing. This moment was going to be everywhere by morning. Nathan handed Valentina the microphone and stepped back, giving her the spotlight. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steady despite the emotional intensity. My father just told you the hard truth about our past. Now I want to tell you about the present and the future. She smiled at Nathan. Yes, Nathan Cross is my biological father. Yes, he abandoned my mother and me. Yes, that caused real pain and real struggle. Those are facts, and they're important. But here's another fact. Over the past 4 months, he's shown up. He's been patient with my anger, honest about his failures, and genuinely committed to being present in my life now. Valentina looked out at the audience. Does that erase the past?
No.
Does it make everything okay? Also no. But I've learned something from my mother. She's here tonight, by the way, and she's the actual hero of this story. She gestured for me to join her on stage. My heart racing, I walked out into the lights. Valentina took my hand. My mom taught me that people are complicated, that they can fail terribly and still have the capacity to grow. That forgiveness isn't about pretending hurt didn't happen, but about choosing what you carry forward. She also taught me that my worth isn't determined by who wanted me or who didn't. It's determined by what I do with the gifts I've been given. The audience was riveted. So yes, Nathan Cross is my father, and CrossTech is helping bring my device to market. But this device exists because my mom worked night shifts and still helped me solder circuits at our kitchen table. Because she taught me to see problems in our community and imagine solutions. Because she showed me what it looks like to work hard, stay humble, and care about people more than profit. Valentina turned to me, tears streaming down her face now. Everything I am is because of you, Mommy. Every good choice I make, every person I help, every dream I chase, it all comes from watching you refuse to give up, refuse to become bitter, refuse to let circumstances define us. You're the innovator who made all of this possible. I was crying now too. So was half the audience. As for the device, Valentina continued, the AccuHealth monitor will launch in 3 months. It'll cost $30 and provide the same monitoring capabilities as systems that cost 10 times that much. We're partnering with community health clinics in underserved areas to distribute them to people who need them most. Every purchase will fund a donated unit to someone who can't afford one. Applause filled the room. This is what my mother taught me technology should do. Not make rich people richer, but make everyone healthier, safer, more empowered. And yes, CrossTech is making that possible. But the dream started at a kitchen table in a small apartment with a single mom who believed her daughter could change the world. She looked at Nathan. I'm grateful for the resources CrossTech is providing. I'm grateful that my father is trying to do better now than he did 15 years ago. But I'm most grateful for the woman who never left, who never gave up, who showed me what real strength looks like. Valentina handed me the microphone. I hadn't prepared anything to say, but words came anyway. Valentina is right that people are complicated, I said. 15 years ago, Nathan made a choice that devastated me. He took my dreams and built his success on them while I struggled to keep us afloat. For years, I was angry, bitter, convinced that his absence defined our story. I looked at him standing there, vulnerable and exposed. But Valentina changed that narrative, not by excusing what happened, but by being so remarkable that she created her own opportunities. She didn't need her father's name or connections or money to be brilliant. She just was. I turned to the audience. When Nathan found out Valentina was his daughter, he could have walked away again. It would have been easier, cleaner, less complicated. But he didn't. He stepped up, and he's been showing up consistently ever since. That doesn't erase the past, but it matters for the future. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I'm not telling you this is a perfect happy ending. We're still figuring out what this family looks like. But what I know for certain is that my daughter deserves every opportunity to succeed, and I won't let my pain stand in the way of that. I also know that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts anyone else. I looked directly at Nathan. You failed us catastrophically. You took the easy way out and left us to struggle. But you're trying now, and that counts for something. Not everything, but something. The room was silent, hanging on every word. So, yes, this partnership is complicated. Yes, there's painful history here. But watch what we're building anyway. Watch what happens when people choose growth over grudges, when we prioritize the work that matters over personal grievances. Watch my daughter change the world, whether or not her father's redemption is part of that story. The applause was deafening. After the speeches, after the press photos and networking and celebration, the three of us stood in a quiet corner, Nathan, Valentina, and me. Thank you, Nathan said quietly, for letting me tell the truth, for not protecting me from the consequences. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for Valentina. She deserved to control her own story. I know, and I'm grateful anyway. Victoria approached, having given us space during the speeches. That was incredibly brave, she said to me. All of you. The truth is messy, but you honored it anyway. The truth was going to come out eventually, I said. Better to control how. She nodded, then turned to Valentina. I know I'm a complicated addition to all of this, but I meant what I said before. If you want support from me, in any capacity, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations. Thank you, Valentina said. I think I'd like that. The four of us stood there, the family that never should have existed, that was built on failure and abandonment and painful choices, but existed anyway. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what any of us would have chosen if we could rewrite history. But it was real. And maybe that was enough. 3 months later, the AccuHealth monitor launched. The response was overwhelming. Community health clinics across the country ordered units. Testimonials poured in from people who could finally afford to monitor chronic conditions. The media coverage was extensive, focusing on Valentina's achievement and, inevitably, on the complicated family story behind it. Some people praised Nathan for publicly acknowledging his failures. Others condemned him for benefiting from his daughter's success after abandoning her. Internet strangers had strong opinions about whether I should have forgiven him or whether Valentina should have rejected his help entirely. We learned to ignore most of it. What mattered was that the device was helping people. That was always the goal. Valentina turned 16 that August. We celebrated with both families now, my parents, my brother, Nathan, and Victoria. It was awkward at first, both sets of adults trying too hard, everyone hyper-aware of the unusual dynamics. But Valentina was happy. That made everything else bearable. Nathan set up college tours for her at MIT, Stanford, and several other top engineering programs. He introduced her to professors and researchers, opened doors that would have stayed closed otherwise. He was using his privilege to benefit his daughter, finally, even if it was 13 years too late. 3 months later, the AccuHealth monitor launched. The response was overwhelming. Community health clinics across the country ordered units. Testimonials poured in from people who could finally afford to monitor chronic conditions. The media coverage was extensive, focusing on Valentina's achievement and, inevitably, on the complicated family story behind it. Some people praised Nathan for publicly acknowledging his failures. Others condemned him for benefiting from his daughter's success after abandoning her. Internet strangers had strong opinions about whether I should have forgiven him or whether Valentina should have rejected his help entirely. We learned to ignore most of it. What mattered was that the device was helping people. That was always the goal. Valentina turned 16 that August. We celebrated with both families now, my parents, my brother, Nathan, and Victoria. It was awkward at first, both sets of adults trying too hard, everyone hyper-aware of the unusual dynamics. But Valentina was happy. That made everything else bearable. Nathan set up college tours for her at MIT, Stanford, and several other top engineering programs. He introduced her to professors and researchers, opened doors that would have stayed closed otherwise. He was using his privilege to benefit his daughter, finally, even if it was 13 years too late. He also did something I hadn't expected. One evening, he asked to meet with me alone. We sat at a coffee shop, not the same one where he and Valentina had their first real conversation, but similar. Neutral territory. "I've been thinking about what you said at the launch event," he began. "About how I built my success on dreams you shared with me." "Nathan, I didn't mean—" "No, you were right. Those early conversations we had about accessible healthcare technology, about using innovation to serve underserved communities, those ideas shaped everything I built at CrossTech. I took your vision and made it mine without ever acknowledging where it came from." He slid a folder across the table. "I can't give you back 13 years. I can't undo the fact that you had to sacrifice your career to raise our daughter alone. But I can do this." Inside the folder were legal documents establishing me as a co-founder of CrossTech's Community Health Division. Not just a name, but with actual equity, decision-making power, and a salary that made my head spin. "I don't want your pity job," I said immediately. "It's not pity. It's recognition of intellectual debt. You had the ideas. You had the passion. You just didn't have the privilege to pursue them because I abandoned you. This doesn't make us even, nothing could. But it gives you the opportunity to build what you should have built 15 years ago." I stared at the documents, my hands trembling. "You'd be heading the division that partners with community clinics, develops affordable medical devices, and ensures our technology actually reaches the people who need it most. You'd have a team, a budget, and the freedom to pursue the innovations you've been dreaming about since college. Why would you do this?" "Because it's right. Because you earned it. And because Valentina deserves to see her mother achieving her own dreams, not just supporting everyone else's." I looked up at him, searching for manipulation or ulterior motives. I found only genuine intention. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer stands indefinitely." I discussed it with my mother that night, laying out all the pros and cons. "He's offering you everything you wanted," she said. "The question is whether you can work with him without it destroying you. I don't know. Part of me wants to prove I can do this, that I'm just as capable as he always was. But another part of me worries that accepting means forgiving him for things that can't be forgiven. Mija, forgiveness and partnership are separate things. You can work with someone professionally without absolving them personally. And you can take opportunities you've earned without it being about him at all." She was right. This was about me, about my dreams, about finally getting to do the work I'd always wanted to do. I accepted the position 2 weeks later. The first day at CrossTech was surreal. I had an office, an actual office with a door and a window and my name on it. I had a team of engineers and designers who reported to me. I had resources to develop devices I'd only been able to imagine before. Nathan kept his distance professionally, letting me build the division without interference. We communicated through appropriate channels, maintained professional boundaries, and generally acted like colleagues who happened to share a complicated past. It worked better than I'd expected. Within 6 months, our division had launched 2 new affordable medical devices and established partnerships with 70 community health clinics across the country. We were making a real difference, exactly the kind of work I dreamed about doing. Valentina was thriving too. Her device had won several more awards. She'd been featured in tech magazines and given a TED Talk about accessible innovation. She was being courted by every top university, though she was leaning toward MIT. And her relationship with Nathan had found a comfortable rhythm. They had dinner once a week, video called regularly, and had developed genuine affection for each other. It wasn't the relationship they would have had if he'd been there from the beginning, but it was real, and it was theirs. Victoria had become an unexpected ally. She mentored Valentina on navigating the tech industry and included her in her foundation's programs. She and I had developed a respectful friendship, 2 women connected by complicated circumstances, choosing to make the best of it. 1 year after the launch event, CrossTech held its annual gala. This time, I attended not as Valentina's mother watching from the sidelines, but as a division head with my own achievements to celebrate. I wore a dress my first real paycheck had bought, deep purple, elegant, the kind of dress that said I belonged in these rooms because I'd earned my place. Nathan gave a speech about CrossTech's community health initiatives, crediting my leadership for the division's success. The applause was genuine, earned through actual work rather than given out of sympathy. Afterward, Valentina found me in the crowd. "I'm proud of you, Mommy," she said. "Not just for what you've built this year, but for everything you've always been. I'm proud of you too, Mija. Look at us. We made it. We did. And we did it together, the way we always have." Nathan approached, Victoria beside him. "Camila, congratulations on the division's numbers this quarter," he said. "The board is extremely impressed." "Thank you. We have a good team." There was a moment of awkward silence, the 4 of us standing in a circle, still learning how to be whatever we were to each other. "Can I say something?" Victoria asked. "This whole situation, it's not conventional. It's not what anyone would choose if they were designing their ideal family. But watching you all navigate it with honesty and grace, it's been inspiring. You've all chosen growth over bitterness, possibility over punishment. That takes courage." She was right. We'd all made choices that led us here. Some of those choices had been terrible, some brave, some just necessary. But we'd ended up building something meaningful anyway. "To complicated families," I said, raising my glass. "To second chances," Nathan added. "To growth," Victoria said. "To making it count," Valentina finished. We clinked glasses, for people connected by failure and forgiveness, by absence and presence, by what was lost and what was built anyway. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I was 22 and pregnant and terrified. It wasn't the revenge fantasy I'd played out in my head during the hardest years. But it was something better. It was real. 2 years later, I stood in the audience at MIT's graduation ceremony, watching Valentina walk across the stage to accept her diploma. She'd graduated early, at 19, with a degree in biomedical engineering and 3 patents already to her name. Nathan sat beside me, Victoria on his other side. My parents were there, my brother, his family. We'd all come to celebrate Valentina's achievement. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos. Valentina with me. Valentina with Nathan. Valentina with both of us, the family that shouldn't work but somehow did. "What's next for you?" Nathan asked her. "I've been accepted to the PhD program here, but I'm deferring for a year. I want to travel, see how different countries approach healthcare accessibility, learn from communities that have been innovating with limited resources for generations." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Who's funding this trip?"
She grinned.
I am. The AccuHealth royalties mean I can actually afford to do this on my own. Though Dad did offer to set up meetings with international partners if I want them. Dad. She called him Dad now. Naturally, without hesitation. It had taken time, but they'd built something real. I'll take the meetings, Valentina continued, but I want to do the learning myself. Figure out what I believe, what kind of innovator I want to be, separate from anyone's expectations. You're already exactly the kind of innovator the world needs, Victoria said. But I love that you want to keep growing. That evening, after everyone else had left, Valentina and I sat in her dorm room, packing up the last of her things. Mommy, can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it? Any of it? Getting pregnant, raising me alone. All the struggle? I looked at my daughter, brilliant and compassionate and strong, everything I'd hoped she'd become. Not for a second. You were never the problem, Mija. You were always the solution. The reason to keep fighting, keep dreaming, keep believing things could get better. Even though it meant giving up your own dreams for so long? I didn't give them up. I deferred them. And when I finally got to pursue them, I did it with the wisdom that comes from struggle, the perspective that comes from raising you. I'm a better innovator now because I spent those years learning what matters. She hugged me tight. I love you. Thank you for never giving up on me, on us. I love you too. More than anything in this world. As I drove back to my apartment that night, not the cramped place we'd shared for so many years, but a nice 2-bedroom in a good neighborhood that I could finally afford, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. Nathan Cross had walked back into our lives thinking he was offering us an opportunity. But really, we'd given him one. The opportunity to see what he'd thrown away. The opportunity to become someone better than he'd been. The opportunity to be part of something meaningful. And I'd gotten opportunities too. Not just the career I'd always wanted, but the chance to show my daughter what resilience looks like, what it means to survive and thrive anyway, what it takes to build something beautiful out of broken pieces. The girl who'd been abandoned at 22 was gone. In her place was a woman who'd raised an extraordinary human being, built a successful career, and learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that the person who hurt you realizes exactly what they missed. I pulled out my phone and opened my social media. There was a notification from the video I'd been meaning to record, the one telling this whole story. I'd been putting it off, unsure if I wanted to share something so personal with strangers on the internet. But maybe someone out there needed to hear it. Maybe some single mother struggling to make ends meet needed to know that the struggle doesn't last forever. Maybe some abandoned girlfriend needed to see that her worth isn't determined by who chose to stay or leave. So I hit record and I told the story. All of it. The abandonment, the struggle, the coincidental reunion, the complicated forgiveness, the unexpected redemption. And when I finished, I looked directly at the camera and said, if you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own struggle, wondering if you'll ever make it through, I want you to know something. You will. Maybe not in the way you imagined. Maybe not with the people you thought would be there. But you'll make it, and you'll be stronger for it. Your worth isn't determined by who abandoned you. It's determined by what you build anyway. I posted the video and went to bed. By morning, it had 10,000 views. By the end of the week, 1 million. The comments section was filled with people sharing their own stories of abandonment and survival, of single parenthood and hard-won success, of complicated forgiveness and unexpected redemption. I'd thought I was just telling my story. Turned out I was telling a lot of people's stories. And maybe that was the real lesson in all of this. We're never as alone as we think we are. Someone else is fighting the same battles, carrying the same pain, wondering if they'll make it through. We're all just trying to survive, to build something meaningful, to turn our struggles into strength and our pain into purpose. Some of us make it, and when we do, we reach back and help pull others through. That's how we change the world. Not with grand gestures or billion-dollar companies, though those help, but with persistence, with resilience, with refusing to let circumstances define us. My daughter won the tech fair, and the billionaire CEO presenting the award was her father, who'd abandoned us. But that's not where the story ended. That's where it began. Everything that came after, the confrontation, the painful honesty, the complicated forgiveness, the unexpected partnership, the career I'd always wanted, the relationship Valentina built with her father. All of that was the real story. The story of what we built anyway. So that's my story. The messy, complicated, painful, beautiful truth of how we got here. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for sitting with the uncomfortable parts, for not demanding a neat and tidy ending, for understanding that real life is more complex than simple revenge or perfect forgiveness. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you that you're stronger than you know, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about survival and strength and refusing to stay broken. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling me, what would you have done? Would you have exposed him immediately? Would you have forgiven him? Would you have taken the partnership or walked away? I want to hear your thoughts because your story matters too. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're surviving, whatever you're building from broken pieces, it matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're so much stronger than you think you are. The best revenge is becoming someone so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that the person who hurt you realizes exactly what they lost. Now go out there and build something beautiful anyway.